Fragile, lazy, disconnected. These are the labels we hear thrown around all the time when people talk about Gen Z. But what if I told you that psychology paints a completely different picture? One that suggests they're not broken at all, but are actually a generation that's uniquely adapted, calibrated even, for the world they inherited. That's what we're going to dive into.
So let's just lay it out. On the one hand, you have the common stereotypes. But when you really look at the psychology behind it all, wow, it's a whole different story. That thing we call being fragile, it's actually a state of being hyper-aware of everything. That laziness, turns out it's a deep need to be driven by purpose. And that feeling of being disconnected, that's actually a new way of adapting to a very, very different world.
So this gets us to the really big question we need to ask, right? Are we just slapping on easy labels because it's convenient? Or are we fundamentally missing the bigger, more complex picture of what actually makes this generation tick?
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to start with what I'm calling the Gen Z paradox. Then we'll unpack what we mistake for anxiety, what's really behind their emotional honesty, their whole take on work, their digital identities, and finally, how it all comes together to prove they are calibrated for the world we live in right now.
So, let's tackle that anxiety label first. You have to remember, this is a generation that grew up watching everything unfold in real time. They never had a buffer. They had a constant, unfiltered, front-row seat to every global event, streamed right into the palm of their hands.
In this quote, it nails it. What looks like anxiety is often mental alertness without a pause button. See, this isn't about a disorder. It's about a baseline state of being. It's like their nervous system learned from day one that it couldn't ever afford to switch off. There was no pause button.
This chronic awareness comes from a few key things. First, that nonstop exposure to global news and really complex social issues. This has given them an incredibly high level of situational awareness. It means they're just wired to see patterns early on, to spot hypocrisy, and to question the systems that a lot of previous generations just accepted.
Now, being constantly aware like that naturally leads to our next point, and that's their emotional honesty, which so often gets mislabeled as weakness or oversharing. But from a psychological view, it's actually a really sophisticated strategy. It's about valuing preventive coping over just putting on a brave face.
And this table just lays out the difference perfectly. Previous generations were pretty much taught to hide their distress to seem strong, right? It was a kind of emotional performance. Gen Z's strategy? Name the feelings and name them early. The goal isn't to look tough, it's to prevent emotional damage from building up, because they saw what happened when people just suppressed everything.
So here's the absolute crucial takeaway on this. Their openness is not a plea for attention. It's a defense mechanism. They speak up to actively prevent the kinds of breakdowns they saw happen from silence and suppression. It's a shield, not a spotlight.
Okay, how about that lazy label?